if something's really important to you, you just got to be persistent. Even if that something of importance doesn't happen overnight or in the time frame that one had intended, don't let it go. Just make a little bit of space in your day or in your week or your month to keep working towards that goal or towards that next achievement that you so desperately want to create or fulfill. Persistence.
You got a seat at my table. You got a here's somebody who believes you. And let truth remind you. You've always got a place to go to. You got a home.
Welcome to The Creator's Journey. I'm your host, Charles Gupton. In each show, I'll talk with creative leaders who face the same fears and obstacles we all face. What makes these folks effective are the processes they've developed that allow them to push through the darkness to consistently ship their work and make a difference. If you've ever felt that your fears and insecurities are getting the best of you, just know that you're not alone. Every creator who works from the heart faces the same challenges. I would love for you to join the community in the Facebook group, The Creator's Journey, for ideas and inspiration that will bring light and direction to your journey.
Here's the key to my front door. Got a pillow if you lost yours. You got a seat at my table. You got a home. Here's somebody who believes you. Let truth remind you. You've always got a place to go to. You got a home.
Rachel Gogos is a serial entrepreneur and brand strategist with a passion for helping business owners and individuals discover, develop, and market their authentic souls online. With over 20 years of marketing and communications experience, her career started at the United Nations headquarters in New York City, where she helped create the look and feel for the organization's first website. She's held writing and editing positions at the Wall Street Journal and DowJones.com, as well as launched 4 companies, including her current company, Brand ID, which she started in 2007. She was also a contributing author to the #1 selling personal branding book on Amazon.com, Personal Branding for Dummies. I met Rachel in summer of 2014 after participating in her workshop on branding at the Good Life Project Camp and started following her work on social media. We've had a couple of chats since then, and I found her to be a most generous and kind soul. If I didn't already have a strong inclination to be a fan, I'd certainly be convinced by one of Rachel's top 3 convictions. Life is too short for bad coffee and bad company. Surround yourself with great people. Welcome, Rachel. I think I'll take surround yourself with great people as the tagline for this show. What do you think?
Oh, I love that. I love the way you're using that.
I felt like it's a kindred spirit because I don't want to suffer bad coffee, but even worse, I don't want to suffer people that are distasteful as well. So,
Yep, they somehow go together, right?
it seems. So day to day, what does Brand ID do for your clients? As I quote your web description, to lead them to define their dreams and live their most fulfilling lives.
Depending on who I'm talking to, usually I say we build websites for entrepreneurs, innovators, and thought leaders. But then if I'm speaking with someone who's open to a longer conversation, I explain that we do a whole lot more than build people's websites. We actually really build their businesses as well as their brands. And before we even get to that phase of a project, we really spend some time getting clear on an individual's or a small business owner's goals, mission, vision, purpose, and impact they want to make on the world with their business. So it ends up being a lot more esoteric than just building a website.
Well, a lot of people don't get that concept. It seems that the brand is more than the tools, and that digging into who they are is more important, it seems to me at least, than the tools they're using. What kind of struggle do you have around people who come and want the tools in effect, or something that looks like someone else because it's a cool widget or a neat way of doing something?
Pretty early in a scope process, before we even start working with someone, you can kind of get an idea if a potential client wants you to be an order taker versus a partner, right, in building out their online business. And we tend to stand away from the people that want us to be order takers.
Right.
Just because we know that our collective styles won't really jive. And if that doesn't mean that when you're in a project, a client doesn't see a really nifty tool somewhere and think that they want it for their website. And in fact, there's a project we've been working on for a little while now where a client is wanting to add kind of more gadgets, let's say, to their website, but we know that it won't really serve their purpose or their business or their end user. So we just try to share some research or stats and explain that may not be the best move for their website versus just outright saying, no, we won't do it. Because all you can do is build things in the best way and guide and consult with people. But in the end, the client has to be very happy and satisfied with their online identity and their online tools.
So what does it mean to have a personal brand? Why is that important?
What it means to have a personal brand is to really be clear on your essence and your reputation as an individual that wants to project a brand, right? And so from a nuts and bolts perspective, what that means is really getting clear on who you are. And while that seems like that would be an obvious encounter for some people, especially people who are deep into their businesses, what happens is we just don't often take the time to answer questions that seem very basic that end up being our guideposts throughout our lives and throughout our work. And some of those questions are around core values and mission and purpose and legacy we want to leave behind. And so the clearer that we are on answering those questions, the clearer we can actually conduct our business. And the reason for that is it's just like when you connect with a person, whether it's a personal level or in a business situation, I feel like the clearer that person is about who they really are at the core, it's so much more easier to connect with them on an individual level. And if have that same clarity and ability to connect in a business situation, then I think you really have the makings of growing a thriving business.
It's seemed to me for some time that, and I think this is reflected on a very large scale as well, but especially on a small to medium-sized company, it seems that the personality or the brand of the company is almost a mirror reflection, a strong reflection of the owner or the founder, and that most of the culture comes down from the top, from that branding or that person. But a lot of people I talk with seem to think they can have a brand that's separate from who they are. Mm-hmm. Again, when they're a small company. And mm-hmm. I kind of shake my head and what are your thoughts on that? Is it possible for somebody, do you think, to have one personality or one personal brand and their company be something entirely different?
No, I couldn't agree with you more, actually, Charles. In fact, the workshop that we connected at a few years ago was around that very same topic, right? About your business brand really being your personal brand. And some examples I use of folks that have much bigger businesses, right, that are not necessarily built under their personal name or their vanity URL, are people like Richard Branson, or even Oprah, though it is around her personal name, but their companies have very much the same energy and identity as their personalities do. And so if we stick with Richard Branson as an example, we can tell that he's a risk taker and he has a lot of diverse interests and he's a really passionate guy and a fun guy. And then when you start to look at even just his branding, right, the visual components of his branding, they have those same attributes. And so for a small company, those two identities it's impossible to separate them. Because if you're just starting out and launching a new business, the people that are going to be drawn to you or some of your first customers might be people that you know, or people that you know refer you to others. And that's all based on your existing reputation, not on your business's reputation, because that doesn't really exist yet. And so, yes, I think it's very, very important that those two are in alignment.
Well, there's a lot of talk in branding, or there has been, about differentiating yourself by somehow finding and then being bold about flying your personal freak flag. Mm-hmm. And again, Richard Branson would be a good example of somebody who definitely sets himself apart, in his own way. What is your freak flag, if you will? What separates or differentiates you from anyone else who plays in your space?
So just like the cobbler's children, right? Usually have the worst shoes. I've
That's what I thought I'd ask. What kind of shoes you wear?
I've found this is my shoes are good, but I'm not a cobbler. My problem is identifying my freak flag.
That's it.
I've spent a lot of time around this question, actually, like
I'll bet.
in my unconscious or like subconscious brain space, I should say. I've actually asked this question to some of my inner circle mastermind folks because it's so hard to see us to see ourselves right through sometimes the work that we're doing and helping others. And I think getting clear on some of these aspects of our identity are really hard to do for ourselves. And that's why it's great to be able to work with other people as consultants or coaches to help us figure these things out. But I'd say my freak flag is a Greek word that I sometimes use. It's called philoxenia. My ethnic background is Greek, and that word means a love of strangers and almost a hospitality of strangers. And what we do with the customers we work with, and me specifically, is I very much bring aspects of my Greek culture and my warmth and my integrity to the engagements of the clients that I work with. And one reason I realized that was a differentiator is because a lot of folks that have come to us to work with them on their web presence have had bad experiences with other web companies. And initially I thought, oh, maybe that's just a one-off, but I started to hear this, similar negative stories about web companies over and over and over. And I realized, wow, that's really a big differentiator of ours then, right? If we work with people from such a place of integrity and warmth and really making them feel like a part of our family, our brand ID family, and literally taking strangers in and showing them a form of love, even though it's in a way to help them shape and grow their business, then that's really a big differentiator of ours.
Well, what you were talking about involves great people and having them around you. It sounds like to me, whether it's in your mastermind or also in the people that you work with. So I want to jump back to your conviction to surround yourself with those folks. Talk with me a little bit about the process of finding great people and then about the process of getting them to meld together to make bigger things happen.
On a team front, in terms of the team of people that I work with day to day, very often I think if we're showing up very authentically in our lives, we tend to attract people also showing up authentically, even though they might be very different than us. And so the team of people that I work with, the majority of them actually live in Pittsburgh, which is where I live. And I've just met them through various synchronous relationships. And then there's a couple of them that I've met just actually through an interview process and putting out job descriptions. So my day-to-day work, and these actually tend to be the people that I spend the most time with, and in some cases even more than my own family. And even though we work virtually, we're often very connected online through various tools. On a personal level, or let's say a business level, but not so much the team level, but more of a mastermind, again, it's just finding people in various in-person opportunities like camp where we met, or other events that I might attend where you just kind of feel like you've met your kindred professional spirit, and you just find a way to connect and collaborate.
Right.
And I think because we work in an online world, right, both of us, when you have those in-person connections, even if people don't live nearby, it's really important to hang on to them and cultivate those relationships, because it really helps us pull us out of our isolated web worlds.
Which is critically important these days, at least for me. Mm-hmm. We live on a farm outside of the city, and I feel like some days, even though the peace and the quiet and the wonder of this place is incredible, I can feel like I'm a world away from where things are happening. So those connections with good people that I've met at conferences or other places or even in town, without that, I can feel just isolated very quickly, like I'm the only one in the world here. So jumping back to your branding, I had another thought. You had told me earlier that William Arruda, the founder of Reach Personal Branding, has been a mentor of yours. How did that come about, and how has the Reach 360 survey influenced your branding work? And I'm assuming since you do it, you've been through it and worked with it. And I did it in preparation for us talking, just to experience it as well. Talk a little bit about that and back around, because I think about that in terms of connecting people and great people working together, as well as discovering who you are, knowing who you are, having self-awareness, if you will, as well as feedback from others. Can you drill into that a little bit about the importance of that?
Sure. So I'll start with your William Arruda question first and how we connected. I was working a full-time job at another organization when I first moved to Pittsburgh about 11 years ago, and my husband read an article about William Arruda and this newish industry of personal branding that was being created, and he brought the article home for me and said, this is something really fascinating. I could totally see you doing something like this because you have this love of people and you've worked in marketing for so many years. And this is such a great way to combine those two passions. So I clipped that article and I literally hung on to that article for about 2 years in a folder. And when I started to figure out that I wanted to leave my full-time job and do something different, I took a training program, a certification program that William Arruda was offering to become certified in personal branding. And to this day, it's really the only certification program that I'm aware of that exists for personal branding. And so I went through that program. It was about 8 years ago now. And as I came to the conclusion of it, William was interviewing for a person to take over the newsletter for Reach. And I thought, that could be really interesting. It's an online newsletter. I had worked in the news business. I'd worked in the online news business. This could be yet another way to combine two passions of mine, right? Journalism and writing and personal branding. And so I jumped on that opportunity, and we worked together for about 4 years, where I was his newsletter editor-in-chief, and then we started collaborating on some clients together as well. So that's how that came about. The Reach 360 is a tool that William created, and he created it based on the science of creating brands. But the spin that William and his company put on it is the assessment is for individuals, even though it's built with the same principles of identifying brands for products. And so it's a really brief web-based assessment, but the fascinating part of it is it asks only 6 to 8 questions. You have the ability to customize it, so you can decide how many questions you want to put in there. But it really gets to the core of who you are. And because it's a 360 tool, you're invited to ask and invite others to respond to those same questions about you. And then you get a detailed report back on the responses, and the responses are all anonymous. So that really encourages people to be very honest about how they want to respond to these questions. But it tends to be a very eye-opening tool and process for individuals because it's very infrequent, one, that we ask for feedback, and two, that we can give feedback anonymously. And the third reason is that we're asking for really specific feedback. So some of those questions are, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my brand attributes? And through projective exercises, people are asked to identify how you might show up if you were a kitchen appliance, or if you were a dog breed, or if you were a type of cereal. And the responses are eye-opening, not in for example, you, Charles, like if you kept coming up as a German Shepherd, that wouldn't be the deep insight. The deep insight is, how do people define German Shepherds and relate them to you? And what happens is, for people that show up authentically in their professional life, in their personal life, and any other circles of their life, because you categorize the respondents according to the relationship you have with them. When you show up authentically in all aspects of your life, you just tend to live a more fulfilling life because you're just showing up as you, and there's consistency in all your circles. For people who tend to be deeply dissatisfied in their work life, you can also see that in the results of this 360 because of the way people are responding and, again, categorizing themselves. So then the work becomes, how can you start to show up more authentically in your work life and combine some of your personal passions and strengths in your work life in a way that's still professionally acceptable, but to start show up more wholly as yourself, right? And so the more self-aware we are, the more understanding we are of how we're showing up in different circles, and the greater our ability to bring alignment, right, to our true selves and the way we show up externally. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, that was a really long-winded answer, but...
No, that's what I wanted to hear your perspective, because going through it was, again, a novel experience for me as well. And I consider myself fairly self-aware, or so I think. And again, those extra questions that you mentioned earlier, I selected what kind of car and what kind of breed of dog people saw me as. And I saw myself as a Subaru. I think, economical, kind of consistent day to day, not a glamorous. I mean, Subarus, they're known, but they're not the top of mind car, but they're just a good, solid automobile that Subaru owners love. But what popped up from a number of people was that I was a Ford F-150 pickup truck, which I happen to own, interestingly enough, but that I was just a hardworking kind of, all the attributes of what you put into a pickup truck. And I was just shaking my head going, that's interesting. And then I saw myself as a herding dog, border collie, because I feel like a lot of my life is around, persistence and herding things and pulling projects together and pulling people together and herding them back and keeping things moving in projects. But what came up, and probably well over half the responses, is that I was a lab or a retriever for just friendliness, will just run with you, go with you, show up, friendly, and friendly kept coming up. I'm going, So and I don't think of myself as being unfriendly, but that's not the attribute that I think of. But it was interesting just to see what came back. And again, the weaknesses as well as strengths both were incredibly insightful. And I didn't disagree with any of them, but they did make me shake my head a little bit and go, wow, I thought I hid that one pretty well and people didn't see that. Oh, it comes through pretty strong, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And
there were some great insights in there.
And I was looking over your results, and what I found interesting is that your reliability, both as a dog and as a car, really comes through. So you're really seen to be a very reliable person, and fun is the other adjective I kept reading, regardless of the type of dog or car you were.
Well, good. I'll try to play on being ever more fun. I'm always trying to be reliable and stick my head down into my work and keep going. And as Linda replied, she said, well, you need to be having more fun. So you need to take that to heart.
Have her read these results.
She's looked over them briefly. So what comes to mind is I think about resistance to work and resistance to feedback at time as well. Because my first responses that I read, I was a little resistant to, again, because I felt like people saw me a little bit differently than I was seeing myself. It made me think about how we resist things ourselves, but also the resistance that seems to be for and around us. What are some of the resistance that you face externally and internally? How do you face it? What processes do you use to deal with that resistance?
For myself personally, or? in working with other people.
With Rachel first, and let's see if there's an insight about working with Rachel and then working with others. Are they different?
I tend to be a middle person on the introvert extrovert scale, and it probably tend to be a little bit more introverted around my work. So I'd say a big resistance that I face is really being comfortable and kind of owning the space that I work within, right? And actually building my own personal brand. And that's just because I tend to be more of a low key person. I'm very content helping other people be in the spotlight and grow their spotlight versus my own.
Right, right.
So that's one big resistance is I know when I'm invited to speak at different events, internally, I'm thinking like, no way. But externally, I'm thinking I have to do it because it's a push, right? And it's resistance that I'm putting upon myself, but I just need to kind of push through that. So I'd say that's probably my biggest one. Other resistance, other than the, time, I don't feel a whole lot of resistance around pushing forward on things, but time is always a challenge in kind of balancing the growth of clients' businesses versus my own. That can sometimes be a challenge too, right? Like the working in your business versus working on your business concept. That's something I struggle with a good bit too.
So how do you take the way that you've dealt with resistance and help a client who is resisting either listening to something they need to do or they're just afraid? How do you encourage them through that fear or that resistance of doing what they need to do to help them move forward and break through?
When you struggle with certain things yourself, it's so much easier to identify them in other people. And so
yes,
I either share, my personal fears or resistances with others when I see they're the same ones. And if they're ones that I don't necessarily share, I might have a story from a previous client that I'll share. And I think I serve as a cheerleader then, or someone who magnifies.
Good.
How do I say this? I'm really good at convincing other people how to do things that they struggle with.
Of course.
For whatever reason, though I can't do that for myself always.
Since it's a big part of your business to help people build more meaningful and impactful connections on the web, where do you see, as you look forward, where do you see that taking place as we go over the next couple of years? On the web, elsewhere? Where are those impactful connections going to be made and how?
For people to grow their businesses?
Yeah, as people try to grow their platforms or their business, it seems like right now there's a lot more noise than signal. I read a great article a couple of days ago that again just confirmed to me that time and attention are becoming more valuable commodities even than money, because we can find more money somewhere, but attention doesn't scale. So as people are vying for attention, where are those connections going to actually be made as we're moving forward? Through the web, through... Yeah, where do you see those happening? Since that seems to be the space that you live and work in a lot with your clients and are aware of.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's this movement to move back to more in-person connection. I feel like there's cyclical time periods that we all travel through collectively. And I feel the last several years have been spent building relationships on the web, and the power of the internet was really intoxicating. And I feel now it's getting to a point where we're overwhelmed, right? We're all in information overload, and that we're kind of moving back to a more traditional way of connecting with folks. So going to events or workshops and meeting with people in person and connecting and having experiential experiences live together, I believe create much more richer and deeper relationships. And even if they're for a very short time, even if you just meet somebody briefly over lunch or breakfast at an event, but if you have a connection that you then cultivate and take it to the web, it still is a deeper connection, or has the potential to have a deeper connection than just starting out with building a web relationship. And I have no research to ground that on, but that's just a belief that I have and something I've seen in my own life.
Well, that's why I ask, because it seems of late that that connections on the web are just getting extremely thin to me. I mean, even people that I've met somewhere, I get to know them better on the web. I use social media to get to know people better and just to watch what they're doing. What do they consistently post, to give me a sense of who they are, which then gives me an opportunity to delve into that when I see them at a meeting or wherever it might be. But that's where the richness of the relationship goes deeper.
Yeah.
So I just wanted your take on it, because it just seems to me that that relationships on the web just are not going where they once were.
Yes.
Or at least people thought they were going, because there's just too much noise. I'm already ADD. It doesn't take me long before I am just overwhelmed. I mean, as an introvert, I feel like when I have finished engaging on even Facebook for a little while, because I'm thinking of the people I'm engaging with, I feel exhausted or tired, as if, oh, I've been interacting with a lot of people. And I realize, no, I haven't. I've been doing something on a keyboard and a monitor, but it feels real to me.
Yeah.
And again, my attention is just, it's just getting strained or thin.
Yeah.
So I need to be with people again. And so I'm just wondering what other people are experiencing, and where somebody that sees it day to day like you do sees it go, where it's going.
Yeah, and I feel the same way as you, by the way. I can end a work day, right, quote unquote work day, and feel very drained. And I think I didn't really connect with anybody in person, though, there's a lot of phone calls or Skype calls or Zoom calls. So you are face to face, but it's not the same as getting in your car and driving somewhere, let's say, right?
Right.
And I think those in-person connections are actually way more energizing, because there's also the technology between the web-based ones that, and I don't know if you feel the same way, Charles, but for example, I can't read anything online. If I'm reading for pleasure, I still very much like a book. When I go to sleep at night,
Oh my word, yes.
I don't even want technology near me. Like I can't sleep with my phone, even if the volume's off by my bed, because I just feel like I need this physical separation from technology to really recharge.
I get it.
Do you feel that?
I absolutely get it. Well, Linda uses her iPad a lot. She reads on it a lot. And again, we both come from journalism background. She's a writer and enjoys reading books. But at night, she is reading a number of novels on her book. There's a series she's been going through for a couple of months. And I can't have it. I tried it, but I keep 2 or 3 books, and I read from, a number of them, like a chapter from each or sections. But I have to have that physical book in my hand, because there's just something about it that it is a separation from technology. I think it's more personal. It's warmer somehow. I don't know how to describe it.
Yes.
But I absolutely.
Yes.
I absolutely have to get away from it to be able to shut my mind, or let my mind get away from the screen and the glow. And it doesn't seem to affect her at all. She can read, flip it off, and a minute later she's knocked out and my mind's racing if I do it.
Yes.
Not that my mind isn't racing already, but it's even more if technology's in my hand. If I check Facebook or I have my phone and I check it, then my mind's abuzz.
Right.
If I don't, I settle down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And there is research on that, by the way. I have 2 children, and my oldest daughter has always had a hard time sleeping. And some time ago, I was reading that, things you should never let children do before going to bed. And one of them is being on any sort of screen, because that really wakes up the mind.
Yeah, well, I'm one of those children. Walk me back. I want to step back a bit, going back to identifying a brand's one-of-a-kind process. Walk me through that process. How you set up a business for potential success. Do you have a story or maybe a couple of stories about a business or two that you witnessed being transformed by understanding their personal brand? If anything comes to mind, tell me about how their dreams were more fully realized.
Yeah.
Anything come to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So we worked with a client last year who is based in Egypt, actually. And when that person reached out to me, he came with a very clear idea of how he wanted to build out his personal brand and how he wanted to make his mark in the world. under a very specific methodology that he developed over many years. I remember being so fascinated that he shared so much of this before we actually even connected by phone or by Skype, just through email. Before we were even engaged and working together, he really shared a lot of his intellectual property. And so when we did start working together, in the back of my head, I thought, wow, this is really a very extensive methodology that sounds a little bit complicated and convoluted, and it might be hard to sell, right? It might be hard for his ideal customer to really consume this. And so as we started working together, really getting clear on his personal brand and his backstory, he shared one day on a consulting call that he wanted to make the world more optimistic. And through that, he had worked as a DJ for many years and a coach, but like a physical coach, a trainer. And so he super energetic guy, but he was bringing his work more into coaching individuals. And so he said, just by chance, he's like, I want to create a day that's around optimism. And so I said, optimism? Well, tell me more about that. So we started to talk a lot more about it. And based on that one call, he completely switched his business model and brand and business idea to have optimism at the core versus this whole other concept that he'd created. And that actually morphed into a physical business for him. And now he's still based in Cairo, and he's doing a lot of work in the Middle East around this concept of optimism, both for individuals and for teams. So his clients are companies. And it was such a thrilling journey for me to be on with him, because he had all the makings of this. He just was so close to it. He didn't see the power in that concept and wanted to take and move down a completely different path, right, than what we initially started collaborating on. And it's turned out to be a very successful endeavor for him and something he's really fulfilled and excited about doing.
There are two phrases that come to mind frequently when I see that: the curse of knowledge, and I call it the curse of proximity, is that the curse of knowledge, we don't know what we know. Mm-hmm. And because we know it, we assume everyone else kind of does. And then that curse of proximity, we're so close to our ideas, we're so close to our own thinking, obviously, that we can't see the obvious things that someone else can by just having a little bit of distance.
Right.
Well, it sounds like you helped him drill down into one area to start making a difference. If you had the resources to drill down into and make a difference in one particular area yourself, what do you think you'd focus on?
Oh, I would focus on the intrinsic aspect of the personal branding process, being more available to young people in high school and college. We don't ask our high school and college students enough personal questions about who they really are as individuals. And I think we give them tons of assessments and the ability to fit into existing boxes, but there's no way at that age where students can really identify their own box and start creating it. And I think that's a real challenge for a lot of people. And so that would be an area I'd love to drill down further in and really make a huge impact.
Right.
That time in a person's life really sets the trajectory for the rest of their life and for many decisions that follow, right? Especially around the type of work that they're going to do in career path. And I think that time period is really ripe where people could really, if they could get clear on what they wanted to do and who they really were, they'd make many different decisions at that stage. In fact, I created a product to do just that for high school and college kids. I'd say the biggest challenge in growing that business and that product is, again, it's just time, because I do run another business entirely. And so where there's definitely been some overlap between the two. So it's a matter of me just kind of honing out the best way to work within both businesses.
This is jumping back to earlier part of our conversation, but it seems to me that self-awareness is one of the least developed aspects of education, helping people become aware of themselves and kind of who they are in relation to other people, not just here's what you are and celebrate it, but how does it relate to other people? And from my perspective, how can you use that awareness or your gifts to serve people so that you get out of a sense of self-centeredness?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I heard one of our mutual friend, Jonathan Field's podcast episodes on goodlifeproject.com where he interviews a person who has a neuroscience background, and they explain the brain of a young person, an adolescent, and then a young person, and how it evolves. And I found that one episode so fascinating, and it really helped me understand, both my own children, but also, it helped me understand the students I'm trying to serve through this other product as well. And really, the part of our brain that takes us from focusing on self versus focusing externally is just not fully developed at a young age or even in the teen years. So that part of the brain just develops as we age, basically, beyond the teen years. And I'm not going to do any justice explaining that, but I'm happy to dig up the podcast episode and share that with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'll put it in the show notes so people can find it as well. Yeah, and there are very few conversations that Jonathan has that I don't find stimulating and challenging and insightful. Mm-hmm. That's just one of many.
Right.
Are there any recurring themes or patterns in your life that you want to change?
Procrastination is one. Time. I tend to always run a few minutes late, and that is driving everybody around me crazy. So I'd say those two. My procrastination has become way better, but I just tend to be a very deadline-driven person. That's just my MO. If I have a deadline, 99% of the time I meet it. I just need to have a firm deadline. And so, what's challenging for people like us is to create that deadline when we know it's a deadline that's somewhat artificial and that we're just creating it to give ourselves a sense of deadline, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And the time one, we have kind of a joke in our household because every clock that I tend to see the most frequently, I set a few minutes ahead. So it's always, it's funny when somebody in my family actually sets it to the right time because it drives them crazy and I don't realize it.
That's funny.
Anyway, it's definitely something I'm working on. I owe that to my Greek culture too, Charles. I believe, in my defense, we're always, us Greeks, we're always, we call it actually Greek time amongst the Greek community. We're always running about 5 minutes behind.
I've heard that numerous times. Kind of the whole Mediterranean mindset of just enjoy life, enjoy the moment, we'll get to it.
Exactly. Speaking
of routines and habits, describe your daily routine for me. What are some practices that keep you balanced and refreshed so you can be most productive, as well as areas that you're still working on?
Well, so I wake up before the rest of the gang, the kids especially, because I need to have a little bit of time to myself in the morning. I usually meditate, and I started that meditation habit just about 2 years ago, again through the encouragement of a mutual friend of ours named Casey Carter, who's a fierce meditator. So I learned all about meditation through him, and that's been something that has helped me tremendously. After I meditate for a little bit, I hop in the shower, get ready for the day, make a cup of coffee, get my children out the door and to the bus, and then I get into my work day, essentially. And I tend to work about 6 to 7 hours fairly straight through. One of my challenges and something I need to add in there is a little bit of time for movement and exercise. So that's something I'm putting in place right now and talking with some friends who are really into fitness to help me around that and give me some tips. And then about 4 o'clock every day, I pick up my children and I go into mom mode. That's what I tell my team, because we're all connected and work together through Slack. So for the next hour or two, I'm kind of like toggling some of the work things that I can finish up and start moving into that phase of my day where I'm a little bit more focused on family and internally. And then a little later in the evening, around 8, 9 o'clock, I might turn my computer back on and do a little bit more work and just prep for the next day. The one thing I do every single night is read before I go to bed, and
Yes.
I often write in a gratitude journal as well.
Yes.
Is that you too?
Do the same.
Yeah?
Yeah, I started a gratitude journal probably 4 or 5 years ago, somewhere in there. I had read an article, or was reading an article about a woman who wanted to separate from her husband, and in preparing to go to court for her divorce, she was writing out all the things he did wrong, all the things that made her angry about him. And it was basically the opposite of a gratitude journal. She was keeping a dislike or a hate journal. And that hit me like
Right.
just like a 2x4 in the head. I realized how many wrongs or how many things that in general we keep in our minds that went wrong with the day, or that went wrong with a person, or that was wrong in a relationship, or whatever. And I think a lot of people keep that stuff as a running, just a running kind of monologue in their heads, not even conscious of it. And I remember that day thinking, I'm going to start the opposite. I'm going to look at, the great things that Linda does, and the wonderful things that happen during the day, and what I'm grateful for. And I'd read in the past that gratitude journals, or those kinds of journals, were helpful. And then, of course, like so many things, once you become aware of them, you see them everywhere. And several things I read just, again, buoyed that sense that it's something I needed to do. And I've missed a few days here and there, but it's rare. And it's especially, at least, helpful for me on nights when I am tired or grumbly and I don't think anything went wrong that day. I just make myself sit there until I can write out at least 3 things. That it may be I have hot water to take a bath, or it may be I ate today and it was, or something. But sometimes they're the smallest things. But I find that flips, or if not flip the switch, at least it kind of like a dimmer.
Right.
It dims down the negative, or something. So it has really shifted. And Linda does it in the morning. She writes out things to start her day with what she's grateful for. So she does the same habit, but on the other end of the day.
Yeah.
But it's something that we found is very helpful for both of us. And we also share those with each other frequently, so that we can encourage the other one with that sense of what went right, or some aspect of what we're grateful for, so that it is a shared process.
Right. That's great.
So yes, much like you, I end my day every day with that.
Well, you've been keeping a gratitude journal long before it's become trendy. So that's amazing. I commend you for that.
Well, it's become one of my habits of every day. I started a number of years ago looking for habits of process, because I am a creative person, and consider ADD to be one of my qualities. I realized that a lot of creative people, jump to what they feel like doing, and that's actually the foundation of this podcast, is to cause me to focus on even more processes. And I realized by keeping processes in place, like every day on social media, I do a question of the day.
Right.
It's probably annoying to a lot of people to see it, but I do it for myself to keep myself in the habit of looking for questions, or being curious, and taking a statement, and can I take a statement and turn it into a question? But it's a habit of process for me. And the gratitude journal is another one. But I have several of those things that I'm doing, because I find if I have habits of process in some places, it helps me establish or keep them in others. And it's that honoring of process when I don't feel like doing it that is important for me. So that's why I was asking those questions of you as well, because I get to learn what other people do that I need to be doing. And meditation.
Right. No, that's
meditation for me is an up and down. I can do several weeks without missing a day, and then I'll be on the road or something will happen. I'll miss one day, and it's just incredibly difficult to get back to it again. And so I have to stop and mindfully do it. And some come easy, and others just don't come easy. Even though I see the benefits of them, they just don't, come easily.
Right,
So
right.
that's why I was asking.
Yeah, I think and I struggle with that too with meditation sometimes, right? If it tends to be a time when my children don't have to get up for school, right? Then I may not force myself to get up well enough, early enough beyond them to be able to do that, because I like to have meditation time when it's really quiet in the house. But I think,
Of course.
as we're talking through this, I think that feeling of like getting off a moving train, right, is much more daunting to get back on if you feel that train is still moving at that same speed, because we've lost momentum, right? Like we've gotten off that wagon for just a day or two. But if you think about that train just actually moving slow, and like, or more of a bike ride where you're just, when you first start to pedal, you have to put just a touch more energy in to start getting that momentum again. It's much easier to get back on. So not feeling like you're kind of starting over again, but like getting on something that just has slowed down.
Yeah, it's a good way to see it. It's one that I have more difficulty in that area than I do in some others. And I think it's because I try in the morning, and the morning's my best writing time and my best clarity of thinking. And if I want to get to that, I go, well, I don't want to sit quietly. I want to do this and get it done before the noise starts. So that's always a struggle. But then I find better ideas come when I've been quiet and let myself just focus on shutting the noise down so the signal gets clear.
Interesting.
But in the moment.
Right. And actually, that's another, as you're asking about processes and habits, I tend on my work days, I tend to schedule any meetings in the latter half of the day and keep the first part of the day open so I could work on some of those more internal projects, or even just be able to work on the work of the strategy for a client as well. So same
here.
Is your
Same here. Yeah, I try not to ever have meetings in the morning for that reason, because I feel like my best thinking, doing, get it done energy is in that morning, and the afternoons are fine for meetings because I can't drill into thinking projects nearly as well. The energy's just not there. I can do it, but not as efficiently, nor I think as effectively. So
yes,
we're absolutely on the same clock, I think.
Yes.
So what defines the creator's journey for you?
The creator's journey, I think, is really a very individualized process that we each have to identify for our own and figure out what works best for us and our abilities and our strengths and our weaknesses to be able to create our best work, right? And bring it into the world. Just figuring that out, defining it, and then moving in that way that we need to devise our own journey or our own path.
Are there excuses that you hear from people around you, whether it's clients or anyone that you're coaching or dealing with, for not being able to make changes? And what do you believe are the mindsets behind them?
Yeah. No, I definitely do.
If you do.
Just thinking through some of the challenges people have had. I'd say two common challenges. One is around how to price their services. And the other is around wanting to create more, right? So wanting to blog and also create email marketing for their businesses, and also, create these marketing funnels or pathways that leave them feeling overwhelmed, because they also have to execute on the work that they need to deliver, right? That they're getting paid to do. So I'd say those are the two most common, and the pricing one is very much a mindset, I believe. I mean, of course, you can do a comparative analysis and see what other people might be or other businesses might be charging for similar services, right? But oftentimes, and I especially find this with women, that they underprice themselves, and that again is very much mindset. And so I've noticed recently that a lot more thought leaders are talking about the mindset around money. So I usually just encourage people to read some of those writings to help them reframe their mindset. In terms of the overwhelm and the needing to create more and more, or actually a very common problem is people feel like they need to be visible on every social media platform when they have an online business. And so what I do is really drill down with people and get them to be very clear on their ideal customer.
Yes.
And then when you get that clarity around your ideal customer, part of that work is figuring out what do they consume online or in print and where do they spend their time. And then you have to map your marketing efforts to where your ideal customer is. And so that's how you best define where you as a business owner, a small company, need to be visible from a marketing perspective.
Good. So what do you want to be remembered for?
I'd say on a personal front, I want to be remembered for being a good role model in the roles that I have, right? So a good spouse and a good mother and a good daughter and a good sister and, all those family relationships that are really important to me. And by good, I mean reliable, right? Like one of your attributes, and fun and caring and thoughtful. On the professional front, what I want to be known for is being that person that can help others get to their next level, right? Whatever their next level is, and really helping people bring their own mission to fruition and bringing good work out into the world. And so a common trait that I find in a lot of our clients is that and I often say this with our team, is like we're really helping people bring good things to life. And that's so important to me, is to help make an impact on the time that I have here on this planet and help others make that impact, because I think it just creates a massive domino effect of goodness.
Yes, it does. Is there someone who's outside the spotlight, but they're doing something important that's having an impact on the world that we should know about?
Yeah, definitely. There's a few people. There's a woman by the name of Emily Green who's working at a project that's called Fit Moms for Life. And they have a website, fitmomsforlife.com. And Emily's not the founder of this organization, but she's very much the number 2 of the organization, who's a little bit more behind the scenes and really helping bring the mission statement of that company forward. And their goal is to work with as many moms as possible to help them create community and create health, wellness, and fitness. So Emily Green is one. Another person is Valerie Sokolowski, and her company is Valerie and Company. And Valerie's someone I met through that Reach personal branding program many, many years ago, about 8-9 years ago. And she's a coach who lives in Dallas, Texas. She's worked with corporations, especially Fortune 500 corporations, for many years. But what her gift is really helping people cultivate their soft skills and their presence, into helping those people be the best that they can be in the areas of life that they show up. And then the third person is a person by the name of Rob Hatch. And Rob Hatch is best known as working with Chris Brogan. But I find Rob to be just a really thoughtful, careful, very self-aware, emotionally intelligent leader. And he, does everything from course creation to running some of the technical and mechanics behind the scenes at owner.com or ownermedia.com.
Yeah, I've been reading Rob's work for some time now. Learned about him through Chris, of course, and their work together. But as Rob has branched out into his own, still working together, but having his own newsletter and thoughts going out on a regular basis, I've been reading his work, and as you said, he's very thoughtful and engaging. He's producing some good work as well. That's great. Is there one thought that you'd like to leave with our community that you believe could make a difference in their lives?
I would say if something's really important to you, you just got to be persistent. And even if that something of importance doesn't happen overnight or in the time frame that one had intended, don't let it go. Just make a little bit of space in your day or in your week or your month to keep working towards that goal or towards that next achievement that you so desperately want to create or fulfill.
I love persistence.
Persistence.
That's good. Good stuff. If folks want to connect with you, what platforms or means are the best for you and for them?
So I'd say there's a couple great places. I'd start out first by visiting our website, which is www.thebrandid.com. And that's THE, the word brand, ID.com. And then also on Facebook, you can find me under my name, Rachel Gogos, and also on a new platform that I'm really enjoying playing around with, which is branded.me, branded.me/Rachel Gogos.
Well, Rachel, thank you for your time. I've looked forward to this conversation for a long time.
Oh, Charles, I appreciate you so much, and thank you for this opportunity to spend some time with you today. It's been great.
It's been great for me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to The Creator's Journey. If you've enjoyed our theme music, the name of the song is You've Got a Home by Krista Wells. If you enjoyed the show and would like to see it fare well, I would appreciate having you go to iTunes and subscribe. While you're there, if you give us a favorable rating and review, it'll make a huge difference in helping a newcomer easily find it. If you want to email me with feedback or suggestions for a potential guest, or if you want to connect with any of the guests or find links to the people and resources that were mentioned in each episode, you can do all of that at thecreatorsjourney.com. We also have a growing community and a Facebook group called The Creator's Journey. Till soon, my friend.